Lionel Shriver writes for her column in this week's magazine about how the political left and right in America will react if their candidate loses this year's election. Is violence on American streets a possibility either way? Lionel joins me now. Lionel, thanks for joining Spectator TV. You write for your column this week about a political conversation that you had with your expat guests over Christmas. Tell us about it.
Well, we were trying to decide what would be worse on the ground if Trump wins or Biden wins in November. Who would be the sorest losers? And the company I was sharing was typically, for most of the people I know, liberal, universally Democrats. And they were convinced that what we should really fear is the reaction of the right if Trump loses again. That these are the people who have all the guns, and there's that horrible precedent of January 6th, and so we'll be better off with Biden as president, but we would have to pay for it with a horrible backlash on the right. And of course, Democrats are always claiming that democracy itself, the republic itself, is in danger. I differed. I was the only person who thought that if Trump wins, not only are we stuck with Trump, but the left would be likely to go bananas. And I've been through this rehearsal before because, of course, we faced the same situation in 2020, right? So one of the reasons I was relieved when Biden won was not only that I had voted for him, but I so dreaded the response of the left if Trump prevailed.
Well, Lionel, let's look at your column and the two possibilities that you and your friends broadly discuss. Your friends are talking about the disgruntled Trump voters, how if they lose again, they'll feel the election was stolen again, and you could see some kind of repeat of January 6th, an attempted insurrection that could be even more violent. You point out that in the aftermath of George Floyd, you had, albeit a minority, but certainly some protesters who turned very violent and in places like Seattle and Portland, Oregon, essentially took over parts of the city in a very violent manner. And the point here being that in either direction, you could see something really quite scary. I suppose the meaningful difference, though, is that Trump was the first president to essentially say that he would not accept the results of the election. The Republicans were tested in 2020, and Donald Trump and his supporters failed. Biden has not been tested in that way. The Democrats haven't been tested at the presidential level in that way.
Well, we don't have the evidence on the left because the left has not been tested in this circumstance. I mean, the one bit of evidence we do have is from 2016, and there was a concerted 4-year effort to effectively deny Trump the presidency and to invalidate his election, which the Democrats don't like to remember because they are fixated on Trump's insistence on invalidating 2020. But there is a strong symmetry there. On the left versus right, January 6th, I found it very disturbing. It was a horrific picture to broadcast all over the world of the U.S. Capitol being invaded by a mob. And so I don't play it down exactly, except that I have striven mightily to maintain a sense of proportion about it. I don't think it was an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. It was not well organized. It was unarmed. I don't think there was any expectation in that crowd that they would actually be able to get into the Capitol. They all, on the CCTV footage, they all look kind of amazed and baffled and wondrous. And they're taking selfies. And this is not an army which is out to overthrow any government. And if you look at the consequences were mostly for the Democrats being able to use that event politically as a cudgel. And of course, the people that they were able to get hold of were prosecuted, I think, quite disproportionately. But in comparison, the riots after George Floyd's death were all over the country, over 140 cities. There was fantastic damage done, massive arson and vandalism, and it went on for months. So I mean, and as you noted, the cities like Seattle and Portland have never been the same. And for the most part, these riots were allowed to go nuts. The law enforcement, because it was under attack ideologically, because this was the defund the police period, laid back in a lot of metropolitan areas and just let it happen. And for the most part, the people who caused all that destruction have not been held to account either. So why wouldn't they do it again? So if I'm looking at November, then that's what makes me most nervous.
Lionel, you and I have not been always painted in a nice light over the past 3.5 years for our open and public decision to support Joe Biden in November 2020. And you and I have spoken about this when we've seen each other in person here at the Spectator offices, that people will often say to us, oh gosh, you must regret that. If you could go back to election day, surely you would recast your vote for another person. And I think both of us resoundingly say, no, I wouldn't. And with the information we had, and certainly with hindsight, with what came on January 6th, I do not regret that vote at all. I would love to know your thoughts on that, if you have any regrets. What I will say though is Joe Biden sold himself on this idea that we might return to some sanity, that we might return to some normality, not in terms of any particular piece of public policy, just in the way that we carry our conversations and political debate. It seems like we're in a worse spot now, perhaps, than we were in November 2020. And I think that goes back to the point you were making at the start about how on earth we're being asked to choose between these two directions, perspectives, and men again.
Yeah, I guess I agree with you that I wouldn't take my vote back in 2020. That said, I feel that I've been victimized by a bait and switch, and that everything that Biden promised he has gone back on. He's been anything but a unifier. All that screaming about MAGA Republicans, and he's increased the polarization, and he's certainly sold out to the far left of his party. And I have not been happy with his policies. He's been all of his appointments from day one were completely controlled by identity politics, so that all that mattered about his cabinet or his staff were whether they were gay or indigenous or black. And it was advertised as much. They were never sold in terms of their qualifications. So that made me a little concerned from the outset. And he spent too much money. I'm deeply disappointed in Biden. So I don't want people to misunderstand me that, oh, yay, go Biden.
Lionel, nothing you've said has come across as, oh, yay, go
No.
Biden.
But I have to admit that coming up on the election, I always vote, even if I'm out of the country. I make sure to get an absentee ballot. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know whom I'm going to vote for. I cannot imagine voting for either one of them. And I can see myself choosing some third party who doesn't have a chance, which is a kind of cheating. It's dodging your responsibility. If you vote for a third party, And you are usually, in the context of American politics, you are usually tacitly supporting one or the other candidates who has a prayer, right? So
I'd cautiously encourage it, of course, depending on who the candidates are, depending on the party. My perspective is we don't owe them anything. We don't have to play their game. Your vote is yours. And if nobody in the two major parties convinces you, I think you're welcome to look elsewhere. I'm very curious as to whether Americans might this time round. There's always talk of third-party candidates. They never really get traction. But this is a really unique set of circumstances where we're being asked to replay the most horrible election. Nobody wants to do it again.
Well, I think that's probably what I would do. But I have to say, I don't feel good about it. And unless the polls really turn around, and I'm talking about a third party whom I can conscionably support and has a chance, then I would vote for that person with a clear conscience. But if they don't have a chance, then I think I'm kidding myself and dodging a choice I don't want to make. And I do. I think that's a kind of self-deceit. It's someone's going to be president, right? So even though we don't want to make a choice between these two men, from the perspective of right now, one of them is going to be president. So we have to decide which one is worse.
Well, Lionel, we're going to have to be in touch because I think both of us are really quite miserable right now. We can send each other like the worst of all the candidates and then figure out who's the least bad over the course of the year. But I'm pleased you got to spend some time with Americans for Christmas.